Can we really rely on the stats given for deaths during COVID? And why do more than half of Americans want the right to sue vaccine makers for injuries? These are just two questions about the COVID-19 vaccines that have been dominating headlines all around the world. The dubious claim that these vaccines, get this, have saved 20 million lives, and the growing public demand for accountability from vaccine manufacturers too. So as we unpack these stories, we'll explore how they paint a troubling picture of vaccine efficacy, safety, and most importantly, public trust. Hello and welcome. I'm Ben Leo and you're watching GBN Originals. All right, let's start with a bold assertion that's been circulating widely, the claim that COVID vaccines saved 19.8 million lives in just 12 months. This figure, published in The Lancet by Imperial College academics, has been parroted by media outlets and officials all around the world. We've heard the stories. But when we examine the numbers closely, let's get the magnifying glass out, the claim quickly falls apart. To understand the magnitude of this claim, we need to look at the global death rate. Annually, about 60 million people die worldwide from any reason. In 2021, due to COVID and lockdowns, this increased to nearly 70 million. So that's an extra 10 million deaths, right? The Imperial College claim suggests that without vaccines, deaths would have skyrocketed to 90 million. That's a staggering 50% increase in global deaths in just a single year. We're being asked to believe that in the absence of these miracle vaccines, the world would have seen a death toll equivalent to the entire population of Germany wiped out in just 12 months. Does that sound plausible to you? It doesn't to me. Typically, about 55% of global deaths occur in Asia and nearly 20% in Africa too. So logic would suggest that most of these saved lives should have occurred in these regions. But does the vaccination data really support this? Here's where the claim really starts to unravel. By November the 8th, 2021, only 51.2% of the world's adult population had received at least one vaccine dose. This means that the claimed 19.8 million lives saved could only have come from this vaccinated portion of the population. And even more telling, let's break down the study period into two halves. By May the 8th, 2021, halfway through the study period, only 16.4% of the global population had received their first vaccine dose. This implies that nearly all the saved lives must have occurred in the second half of the year. Now let's consider what we're expected to believe. In just the second half of 2021, do you remember, vaccines supposedly prevented an additional 15 million deaths among less than half the global population. This absolutely defies logic and contradicts what we know about the global death rates and vaccine distribution. So we're being asked, you and I, that instead of 35 million deaths in the second half of 2021, over 50 million would have occurred without vaccines. That's an additional 15 million deaths prevented in just 6 months. Wow, what a miracle. Among less than half the global population. Does this align with your understanding of how the pandemic unfolded? Can you remember 2020 and 2021? It doesn't ring true with me. Now, let's turn to a recent poll that reveals growing public skepticism about vaccine safety and the desire for accountability. These findings shed light on the eroding trust in both the vaccines and the institutions promoting them. Not just the pharmaceutical companies, by the way, the likes of Anthony Fauci, Chris Whitty, the medical experts, and all the health establishments in the UK, the US, and worldwide. A Zogby Strategies poll shows that more than a third of Americans, 36% to be precise, have little or no trust in the CDC and the FDA. I'm surprised it's so low, actually. This lack of trust isn't just among fringe groups and conspiracy nuts. Even 33% of moderates express distrust in these agencies too. And when over a third of the population doubts the very institutions responsible for public health, or at least they're meant to be responsible, we have a serious credibility problem. The poll reveals that 41% of voters believe the government mishandled or failed to handle the COVID-19 pandemic. Only a mere 13% think the government handled it effectively, and they're probably still wearing masks. These numbers highlight a significant credibility gap between health authorities and the public, and it's clear that the official narrative about the pandemic response isn't aligning with many people's lived experiences. Perhaps most tellingly, 57% of respondents believe vaccine makers should lose their immunity from legal action. The public is demanding the right to sue vaccine manufacturers for injuries, a clear indication of growing concern about vaccine safety. And this is a crucial point because currently, do you remember, vaccine manufacturers enjoy broad legal protections that shield them from liability for vaccine injuries. Well, that was part of the deal. Government said, give us your vaccines, please, we need them now. And the manufacturers, the likes of Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, they said, you can have them, but with a clause. As long as anything happens, it isn't put on us. They're immune. So the fact that a majority of Americans want this protection removed speaks volumes about the level of trust, or lack thereof, in these very vaccines. So when we combine these two stories, firstly, a troubling picture emerges. Not only is the primary justification for the vaccine's widespread use, the claim of millions of lives saved, it's highly questionable, but public trust in the vaccine and the agencies promoting it is rapidly eroding. The claim of 20 million lives saved appears to be a gross exaggeration, completely unsupported by real-world data, and it raises serious questions about the actual effectiveness of the vaccine and the integrity of the institutions promoting it. If the vaccine's efficacy has been so drastically overstated, I wonder what else might have been exaggerated or misrepresented during the pandemic. This casts doubt on all the data we've been presented regarding the vaccine's performance. The public's strong desire to hold vaccine manufacturers legally accountable suggests widespread concern about vaccine injuries. It's further supported by the lack of trust in health agencies, indicating that official reassurances about vaccine safety just are not convincing the public. You're not buying it. So we must ask ourselves the big question. If these vaccines are as safe and effective as we've been told, just why is there such a strong push for legal accountability? The growing scepticism suggests that many people have experienced, or witnessed even, adverse effects that aren't being adequately addressed by health authorities. The timeline of vaccine distribution highlighted in the debunking of the 20 million lives claim also underscores and highlights how quickly these vaccines were developed and rolled out. The rapid deployment, do you remember in the US, Operation Warp Speed they called it, combined with growing safety concerns, raises big questions about whether proper safety protocols were followed. Typically, as you and I know, vaccines undergo years traditionally of testing before being approved for the public. The COVID vaccines, however, were developed and deployed in a matter of months. While the urgency of the pandemic was cited as justification for this accelerated timeline, just get them out there. We must consider whether this haste has come at the cost of thorough safety testing. The issues we've discussed tonight have far-reaching implications that extend beyond just the COVID-19 vaccines. The lack of trust in the CDC and the FDA, revealed by the Zogby poll, is deeply concerning. These institutions are responsible for safeguarding public health. They're meant to be looking after you and me and our children, and indeed our grandchildren. And their effectiveness relies heavily on public trust. So if a significant portion of the population now starts to doubt their guidance and expertise, it could have serious consequences for the future of public health initiatives. The widespread acceptance of the 20 million lives saved claim, despite its clearly obvious flaws, raises the question about the role of the media in disseminating health information. How many other claims have been accepted and repeated without proper scrutiny? And I'm not just talking about the health sector either. This underscores the need for more critical investigative health journalism. The push for vaccine manufacturer liability brings up very important questions about informed consent too. If the public feels they weren't given accurate information about vaccine efficacy and safety, and they were told to get the vaccine because it stops transmission and you won't kill granny, it challenges the ethical basis on which the mass vaccination campaign was conducted. These controversies could have a chilling effect on the future of vaccine development and uptake. If public trust in vaccines and health authorities continues to erode, it could pose significant challenges for addressing future public health crises. And there's a massive uptick now in parents, mums and dads, choosing not to get their newborn children vaccinated with traditional childhood jabs. As we reflect on these issues, it's clear the narrative surrounding COVID-19 vaccines is far from settled. The claim of 20 million lives saved appears to be built on, let's be very generous, very shaky foundations. And while public trust in both the vaccines and the institutions promoting them, the FDA, the CDC, the MRHA here in the UK, they continue to decline. The growing demand for accountability from vaccine manufacturers is a clear signal that many are questioning the safety and efficacy of these rapidly developed jabs. As journalists and citizens, it's our duty, me and you, to continue asking hard questions and demanding transparency in matters of public health. The issues we've discussed, inflated efficacy claims, safety concerns, rushed development and eroding public trust, paint a very troubling picture indeed of the COVID-19 vaccines. They suggest the vaccines may not be as effective or as safe as we've been led to believe, and that the institutions responsible for protecting public health may, just may, have failed in their duty to provide accurate, trustworthy information. This has been Ben Leo. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to GB News YouTube for more.